In a corner of the Pacific, a handful of islands dared to dream of eternity. From myth-born gods to steel-tempered samurai, from the whisper of bamboo forests to the roar of modern engines, Japan has reinvented itself 1,000 times, yet never lost its soul. Every sword strike, every temple bell, every cherry blossom tells a story of survival, beauty, and relentless reinvention. This is not just history. This is Japan, 30,000 years of wonder compressed into one epic journey.
During this time, Japan saw the flourishing of various schools of thought. One notable example is Zen Buddhism. Meditation and mindfulness, and had a profound impact on Japanese art, architecture, and the era of cultural blossoming was accompanied by the emergence of a rigid social hierarchy that defined the roles and status of individuals in society. At the top of this hierarchy were the samurai, the military nobility who held vast land and wielded considerable power. Below them were farmers, artisans, and merchants. With the latter, two classes often looked down upon due to the prevailing Confucian values that favored a life of manual labor over trade and commerce. This social structure became deeply ingrained in Japanese culture, influencing everything from interpersonal relationships to artistic motifs. By the late 1300s, Japan found itself at the brink of civil war. The escalating conflict between rival samurai clans culminated in a series of brutal battles, most notably the famous Battle of immaculate in 1336. Amidst this chaos, a young monk named Tadayoshi stepped forward claiming divine mandate and took the title of shogun. Though his efforts to restore imperial authority initially succeeded, they were short-lived. Several rival samurai clans had banded together, forcing Tadayoshi to flee north to the city of Ikuru in Kanazawa, and then escape to the Korean peninsula. In exile, Tadayoshi's son, Deer, and Ashikaga Takauji rallied support in northern Japan and in 1386 successfully marched on the capital. Soon after, he established the Muromachi shogunate, effectively ending the Kamakura shogunate's rule. Thus, the Ashikaga shogunate marked the beginning of a new era in Japanese history. This period witnessed significant cultural advancements and a flourishing of arts and literature. Under the patronage of the shogun, renowned artists like Onan, Tosa Mitsuoki, Ryuim, produced exquisite works that blended Chinese influences with distinctly Japanese aesthetics. However, this cultural vibrancy was not matched by political stability. Internal conflicts within the shogunate escalated, culminating in a major civil war known as the Onan Wars, 1467–1477. This protracted and devastating conflict shattered the fragile peace and plunged Japan into a century of civil strife known as the Sengoku Jidai Hinchu, or Warring States period. During this tumultuous time, numerous regional lords or nani daimyo emerged, each vying for supremacy and dominance across the country. Some of the most prominent names from this era include Oda Nobunaga, who laid the foundations for a unified Japan. His successor, Nama Toyotomi Hideyoshi, known for his massive armies and ambitious campaigns. And finally, Ryuji Tokugawa Ieyasu, the founder of the Tokugawa shogunate. Despite the prevalence of warfare and destruction, this era also saw intellectual ferment as new ideas and philosophies like humanism and scientific thinking took root. Notable figures such as the philosopher and strategist Miyamoto Musashi embodied the spirit of this age, excelling in various fields and leaving behind enduring legacies. Miyamoto Musashi is perhaps best known for his book, The Book of Five Rings, a treatise on swordsmanship and strategy that continues to be studied today. In the early 1600s, the last great unifier, Tokugawa Ieyasu, emerged victorious from the Battle of Sekigahara, effectively ending the Sengoku period and ushering in a new era of peace and stability under the Tokugawa shogunate. This new regime implemented a series of policies designed to maintain control and order throughout the country. Central to this strategy was the establishment of a strict social hierarchy known as the Shizo-kur-on, which divided the population into 4 main classes. At the top were the samurai, followed by farmers, artisans, and finally merchants. Furthermore, the Tokugawa government introduced a rigid system of laws and controls. To ensure obedience and discourage dissent, the concept of nai asono joy, nai, literally meaning revere the emperor, expel the foreigners, became a cornerstone of this policy. It advocated for the isolation of Japan from foreign influences, aiming to prevent any potential threats or disruptions to the existing social order. This isolationist measure had a profound impact on Japan's interaction with the outside world, limiting trade and cultural exchange with other nations. The consequences of violating these regulations were severe, ranging from banishment to execution. Such stringent measures contributed to the creation of a climate of conformity and obedience. This restrictive environment, however, also stifled innovation and limited exposure to new ideas and technologies that were transforming the world outside of Japan as borders. Nevertheless, during this period, Japan saw significant cultural and economic growth. Cities flourished, skilled crafts thrived, and a distinct Japanese identity continued to evolve. The Tokugawa shogunate's policies may have curtailed Japan's exposure to global developments, but they inadvertently fostered an environment where Japanese culture could flourish without external pressures. The consequences of this decision would become starkly apparent when the rest of the world began its rapid industrialization. Japan, cut off from these advancements, remained largely untouched by the sweeping changes that were reshaping the global landscape. That brings us to the crucial turning point in Japanese history that occurred in 1853 when U.S. Commodore Matthew Perry arrived in Japan demanding the opening of trade relations. This event shattered the illusion of Japan's isolation and forced the country to confront the realities of the modern world. Faced with this ultimatum, the Japanese leadership had no choice but to comply, marking the end of over 200 years of isolation. This pivotal moment would lead to a series of dramatic changes that would transform Japan from a secluded agrarian society into a modern industrialized nation. And that, my friends, concludes our journey through time today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we've loved creating it for you. Before we part ways, we'd like to extend a warm invitation. If you've been captivated by this episode and find our content valuable, we invite you to show your support by subscribing to our channel. Your support means the world to us and inspires us to keep bringing fascinating historical tales to life. Thank you for joining us today. Stay curious, keep exploring. In 1192, Minamoto no Yoritomo was granted the prestigious title of Shogun, or Supreme Military Commander, making him the unofficial leader of Japan. This marked the beginning of a new era of governance, one dominated by the military class that would endure for nearly 7 centuries. The samurai, Japan's elite warrior class, would soon face a formidable challenge. In the early 1200s, one of the most powerful empires the world has ever known, the Mongols, turned their sights toward Japan. In 1265, the Mongol ruler Kublai Khan sent a demand for submission, insisting that Japan become a vassal state under Mongol. Silence in response was taken as defiance, prompting the Mongols to prepare for invasion. In 1274, Mongol forces landed on the shores of Kyushu, expecting a swift victory. Though vastly outnumbered, Japan's samurai warriors mounted a fierce resistance. Just as the battle reached its most intense point, a mighty typhoon swept through the region, later dubbed kamikaze, or divine wind, which obliterated nearly the entire Mongol fleet, forcing a hasty retreat. Undeterred, the Mongols returned in 1281 with an even larger force for a second attempt at conquest. But once again, a powerful typhoon struck, delivering a devastating blow and destroying most of their fleet before a full invasion could even take place. This second failed campaign marked the end of Mongol attempts to conquer Japan. Despite the successful defense, the financial burden of repelling the Mongols was enormous. The military government's treasury was left nearly empty, and many samurai who had fought bravely were left unpaid, sowing deep dissatisfaction among the warrior class. Tensions between the samurai and the ruling shogunate began to intensify. This unrest came to a head in 1333, when Emperor Go-Daigo launched a rebellion with the aim of restoring imperial rule and reclaiming authority for the imperial court in Kyoto. Though his efforts initially succeeded, the emperor's reign was short-lived. By 1338, just 5 years later, Go-Daigo was overthrown in a coup that led to the restoration of shogunal power, this time under the command of Ashikaga Takauji, founding a new line of military rulers. However, while the shogun regained nominal authority, real power remained with the regional warlords known as daimyo, who governed their territories independently. These feudal lords commanded their own samurai forces and frequently formed alliances, betrayed one another, and fought internal battles to expand their influence and control. This volatile balance of power often erupted into armed conflict. One of the most destructive of these internal struggles began in 1467, the Onin War. Ostensibly a dispute over succession within the Ashikaga shogunate, the war quickly spiraled into a full-scale civil conflict, with various daimyo choosing sides. The result was the complete breakdown of central authority, as feudal lords carved the country into independent domains, effectively fracturing Japan into a chaotic patchwork of competing era, remembered in history as the Sengoku period or the Age of Warring States, extended well into the 1500s. It was marked by constant conflict and notable military innovations. Among these developments was the rise of ninjas, covert operatives skilled in espionage, sabotage, and assassination. In addition, Buddhist warrior monks, known as Sohei, began taking to the battlefield in large numbers, fighting alongside regional warlords. A major transformation in warfare came in 1543, when a Portuguese trade ship, blown off course, landed on the island of Tanegashima, located south of Kyushu. The 3 Portuguese sailors on board became the first Europeans to reach Japan, and they wasted no time in establishing trade, connecting Japan to the broader Portuguese commercial network that stretched across the Indo-Pacific. Each year, a ship, known to the Japanese as the Black Ship, arrived to engage in trade. Among the most sought-after items were European matchlock firearms, a revolutionary new weapon that the Japanese had never encountered before. The arrival of these guns quickly shifted the balance of power. Feudal lords, or daimyo, eager for an edge in the ongoing conflicts, adopted the new weapons enthusiastically. By 1556, it's estimated that over 300,000 firearms were already in use on Japanese soil. The Portuguese also brought Christianity with them, which had a surprising influence. Many Japanese who converted to the new faith were rewarded with preferential access to weapons and, in some cases, even direct military assistance from the Portuguese. One of the most notable warlords to forge ties with the Portuguese was Oda Nobunaga. While he did not convert to Christianity himself, he recognized the power of European firearms and used them strategically to expand his control and begin the unification of Japan. However, Nobunaga's campaign was cut short in 1582, when he was betrayed and killed in an ambush. His efforts were soon continued by his general and loyal follower, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a remarkable figure who rose from humble peasant origins to become a samurai and eventually a daimyo. Hideyoshi succeeded where Nobunaga had fallen short, completing the task of unifying Japan under a single rule. Despite his powerful position, Hideyoshi never took the title of shogun, likely due to his non-aristocratic background. Instead, he governed as the imperial regent, Kampaku, and later assumed the title of chancellor, Daijo Daijin. He intended for his son, Toyotomi Hideyori, to inherit these titles. However, since the boy was still a child at the time, Hideyoshi arranged for his 5 most trusted generals to act as protectors and guardians of his son's claim until he came of age. But Hideyoshi's death in 1598 triggered yet another power struggle. A new civil war erupted between factions loyal to Hideyori and those who backed Tokugawa Ieyasu, a former ally of Hideyoshi who now sought power for himself. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, where Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious. His triumph effectively ended the long era of civil war and marked the beginning of a new chapter in Japanese history, the Tokugawa shogunate, which would go on to rule Japan for over 250 years. Subscribe and be notified when we release new videos. Before the 1800s, Japan had been on a path of isolation for over 200 years. So how did this tiny band of samurai maintain control over such a large and unruly nation? And what ultimately led to their demise? In 68 years, Japan was governed by the Tokugawa shogunate, a period known as the Edo period. This era is often seen as the most important chapter in Japan's history, a time of great prosperity and cultural brilliance, but also of strict controls and rigid hierarchy. The Tokugawa shoguns, particularly the third shogun, Iemitsu, were acutely aware of the potential threat posed by Christianity. By 1638, all forms of Christian worship were banned in Japan, and in 1639, Iemitsu implemented the sakoku, or closed country policy. This policy sealed Japan's borders, prohibiting its citizens from traveling abroad and barring most foreigners from entering the country. To enforce this policy, large ships, the only way to cross open seas, were no longer permitted to be built. Foreign trade was tightly restricted. Only China and Korea were allowed to trade with Japan, and only the Dutch were permitted to enter the country. They were confined to a small island in Nagasaki called Dejima, where they were closely monitored. Despite these constraints, the Tokugawa era was marked by sustained growth. Throughout the 17th century, Japan's population doubled to over 30 million. Major infrastructure projects were launched to enhance communication, education, and internal commerce. A vibrant merchant class developed, and unique Japanese cultural forms flourished, from ukiyo-e prints to kabuki theater. However, by the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the system began to show signs of strain. Agricultural expansion, which had fueled earlier growth, stalled. At the same time, natural disasters and widespread famine in the 1830s exposed the shogunate's inability to effectively manage national crises, leading to increased dissatisfaction among the population. Meanwhile, Western scientific knowledge slowly began to filter into the country through Dutch books, known as rangaku, or Dutch learning. These texts introduced Japanese scholars to modern European science and medicine, subtly planting the seeds of change within a tightly controlled society. This all came to an abrupt end in 1853, when a squadron of American warships commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry anchored in Edo Bay. The United States sought to establish trade relations and warned that it was prepared to use force to achieve its goals. Faced with an overwhelming technological disadvantage, the shogunate had little choice but to comply with American demands, opening its ports to U.S. reps. This agreement, soon extended to include other Western powers like Britain and Russia, was deeply unpopular among many Japanese, especially in the southern domains of Choshu and Satsuma. These regions would eventually play a key role in the political transformation that followed as the shogunate's authority continued to erode under both internal and external pressure. To learn more about the fascinating history of Japan, stay tuned for more information. In 1868, two of the most powerful domains in Japan, Satsuma and Choshu, formed an alliance. Together, they persuaded the young Emperor Meiji to issue an edict calling for the dissolution of the Tokugawa shogunate, which had effectively ruled Japan since 1603. Their combined forces then advanced on the unsuspecting Edo, kicking off what became known as the Boshin War. After years of bitter fighting, The shogunate's forces were defeated, and in 1869, the imperial court relocated to Edo, which was renamed Tokyo. This marked the beginning of the Meiji Restoration, a radical transformation that would see Japan evolve from a feudal society into a modern nation-state in less than half a century. The new Meiji government placed top priority on modernizing the country's infrastructure. It built railroads, telegraph systems, and a nationwide education network. It also lifted the ban on Christianity, which had been imposed following the arrival of Western missionaries in the 16th century. To ensure the success of these reforms, the government invited hundreds of foreign experts, mostly from Britain, France, and Germany, to come to Japan and share their knowledge in mining, finance, law, and transportation. Perhaps the most important reform, however, was in the military. The previous decentralized military structure consisting of semi-independent feudal armies was replaced with a modern, centralized force. This new army and navy were equipped with the latest weapons and were trained along Western lines. And in 1877, this modern military was used to put down the Satsuma Rebellion, a large-scale uprising led by disaffected samurai who bitterly resented being made irrelevant by the rise of this new, centralized professional military. With internal stability restored, Japan's attention turned outward. Inspired by the colonial empires of the West, Japan began to expand its own sphere of influence. It consolidated its control over Hokkaido and the nearby Ryukyu Islands, which it renamed the Ryukyu Kingdom. Then its sights set on China and Korea. In 1894, fighting broke out between Chinese and Japanese forces in Korea, sparking the First Sino-Japanese War. Despite being outnumbered, Japanese forces were more organized and better equipped, thanks to the influx of Western weapons and the military training that had been imposed on the entire male population. After 4 years of fighting, the Qing dynasty was forced to sign an agreement recognizing Japanese control over Korea and ceding Taiwan to the Japanese, who had just emerged as a major power in East Asia. In 1902, this growing power was formally recognized when Japan signed a military alliance with Britain, which was aimed at counterbalancing Russia's growing influence in the region. But this did little to ease the growing tension between the two powers, which came to a head in 1904 when Russia refused to withdraw its troops from Korea. This refusal led to the Russo-Japanese War, which saw hostilities erupt along the Yalu River. Despite being heavily outnumbered, Japanese forces, again bolstered by Western weapons and training, delivered a stunning victory against the much larger Russian force. The war would culminate a year later in the Battle of Tsushima, where Japan's state-of-the-art navy would deliver a crushing blow to the Russian fleet, sinking or damaging a total of 25 Russian ships. With Russia decisively defeated, Japan now controlled all of Korea, and in 1910 it formally annexed the Korean peninsula, bringing an end to the era of Japanese imperialism and establishing Japan as a major global power in the early 20th century. Thanks for watching. Do you want to know how World War II ended? No, not with the atomic bomb. Let me explain. Energized by its recent military victories, Japan's ruling military leaders sought to dominate the Asia-Pacific region. Hoping to seize former German-controlled territories in the South Pacific, Japan entered World War I on the side of the Allied powers. At the end of the conflict, Japan took part in the Versailles Treaty negotiations and benefited from increased global recognition, a development further enhanced by its admission into the League of Nations. However, like many other nations in the post-war era, Japan experienced a rise in nationalist and authoritarian ideologies, especially within the military establishment. This was coupled with a desire to overturn the outcome of World War I, which had not gone as well as they had hoped. As a result, the Japanese military became increasingly aggressive in its expansionist goals, leading to the outbreak of the Second Sino-Japanese War in 1937. By the end of the conflict, Japan had conquered large parts of mainland China and was viewed with growing suspicion by the international community. In an effort to counter Japan's military aggression, the United States implemented strict economic sanctions, aiming to undermine Japan's capacity for war. When World War II erupted in Europe in 1939, Japan found itself at a crossroads. Realizing the need to realign itself with like-minded powers, it entered into the Tripartite Pact with Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy in 1940. This move intensified tensions with the U.S. and other Western nations. Japan further alienated Western colonial powers, Britain, France, and the Netherlands, by expanding its control over parts of Southeast Asia, encroaching on their territories. Facing ongoing economic hardship and diplomatic isolation, Japan's leadership, Prime Minister and General Hideki Tojo, concluded that a preemptive strike against the United States was essential to protect its interests and maintain control over its recent acquisitions. On December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise aerial assault on Pearl Harbor, targeting the U.S. Pacific Fleet stationed in Hawaii. This attack immediately prompted America's entry into World War II as a full participant. The United States began a wide-ranging military campaign against Japan, which had already occupied the Philippines, Malaya, Hong Kong, Singapore, Burma, and the Dutch East Indies. The Allies, led by the United States, engaged in intense and grueling combat across the Pacific. A critical part of the Allied strategy involved capturing islands with key air bases, which were essential for launching bombing missions against the Japanese home islands. But the high cost in lives and the slow progress of the campaign made it evident that a full-scale invasion of Japan would come at an enormous human cost. Facing the prospect of massive casualties in a land invasion, the U.S. opted to use a newly developed and top-secret weapon to force Japan to surrender and bring the war to a swift end. For more such informative shorts, stay tuned. On August 6th and 9th, 1945, the United States deployed atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing over 100,000 people. Following these attacks, Japan communicated its surrender to the Allied powers on August 14th, which was publicly confirmed by Emperor Hirohito during a radio broadcast the next day. After the war, Japan came under Allied occupation, which was headed by American General Douglas MacArthur, who oversaw the country's reconstruction. The Japanese military was disbanded, and the government underwent a process of democratization. Although Emperor Hirohito was allowed to remain in office, he was required to renounce his divine status, a central element of state Shinto, which had previously justified the emperor's religious authority. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Shigeru Yoshida, Japan redirected its national efforts from aggressive foreign ambitions toward economic rebuilding and development. By 1955, the country had surpassed its pre-war economic output, and by 1968, it had become the second-largest capitalist economy in the world. This extraordinary post-war growth can be attributed to various factors, including the introduction of new technologies, a highly skilled and educated workforce, a stable political system, and a society that values hard work, discipline, and technological innovation. Japanese people's dedication to these principles enabled them to transform their country from the ashes of war into one of the world's leading economic powers. During this period, Japan emerged as a global leader in automobile manufacturing in the electronics industry, generating a sustained economic boom that became a model for other nations. Today, Japan's modern state ranks highly in measures of economic output, technological innovation, and life expectancy, showcasing the resilience and dedication of its people. The Japanese transformation from a nation devastated by war to a modern, prosperous, and unified country is truly remarkable. After enduring the immense hardships of the world's most destructive conflict, the Japanese people chose to pursue a path of peaceful reconstruction, dialogue, and reconciliation. They built a strong and vibrant democracy, fostered international cooperation, and prioritized economic growth and technological innovation. Today, Japan stands as a testament to the power of resilience, hard work, and peaceful coexistence. It serves as an inspiration to nations and people around the world, demonstrating that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, peace and prosperity can prevail. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe for more historical insights.